Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. So now we are ready to start looking at the word of the Buddha, known as the Buddha Vachana in the Pali language. And so the idea here is to try to find some inspiration and understanding, especially inspiration and understanding that is supportive of meditation practice. That is the idea here. So we're going to look at some of these words of the Buddha, see what the Buddha has to say about these things. And one of the things that I mentioned yesterday is the importance of the idea of right view. When we see the world in the right way, then the mind inclines in the right direction. The mind inclines towards giving up those things that don't really give rise to proper happiness, that gives rise to more problems, that always kind of goes on and on forever. So we give up those things that are not really useful, not really supportive in our life. And the mind instead turns towards those things. Okay. Sadhu, sadhu. What is that? Water. Okay. Not very exciting. You can bring something more exciting next time. No. No, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And so the mind turns in the right direction. It inclines towards peace. It inclines towards kindness. It inclines towards generosity. It inclines towards emptiness. All of these beautiful qualities. And then the meditation becomes much easier as a consequence. So this is the idea. We value those things that are really valuable. And this is what right view is all about. So we're going to discuss this idea of right view, and I'm going to look at a variety of suttas. Some of these suttas are about the biography of the Buddha's life. Especially the first one we're going to look at is called the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, which means the noble search. So we're going to look at some of these suttas that have to do with the life of the Buddha himself. And these are what you might call autobiographical suttas, where the Buddha talks about his own life. He explains to us how he lived and what he did to achieve his awakening. So this is kind of very, I find some of these suttas really inspiring, actually, very powerful. The Buddha goes into a lot of detail about where he went wrong. He was thinking in the wrong way, he was practicing in the wrong way, and then he kind of had to find his way out and find kind of the path forward. And we can imagine how difficult it was if you're the first person. It's difficult enough if you're given the path, here is the path, practice it now, become an arahant. Still can't become an arahant, even though you're given the path. The Buddha didn't have anyone to teach him. He was the first one. Imagine how difficult it is. And this is what makes the Buddha special. This is what makes the Buddha unique. The fact that he was able to find his way through this samsaric existence, through all of these attachments, through all of the delusions, through all of these problems. That is what makes the Buddha unique. And that is what separates him from the rest of humanity. It is a very important, one of the things that I want to sort of emphasize on this retreat is the idea of the Buddha, how to think about the Buddha in the right way. It's very easy to think about the Buddha in the wrong way. And the right way to think of the Buddha is as a human being. He was a human being. He was born into this world. He's basically the same as we are. You start reading the suttas, you see the Buddha had before, not the Buddha to be before his awakening. He had defilements of the mind. He had wrong views. He was practicing all kind of practices that did not lead to awakening. Yesterday, when I was walking around with Freddie in the forest, we almost got lost, but we made it just in time to come here. Don't say, that's right. And they had a statue there, and some people think this is a Buddha statue. It's a statue when the Buddha is completely emaciated. It's so just skin and bones. And more water? More water. Okay, sadhu, excellent. Thank you, Daniel. That's very kind of you. And so the Buddha to be, he was completely emaciated. But that is actually not a Buddha statue. That is actually a statue of the Bodhisattva before his awakening. And so when you bow down to that, you're not really bowing down to awakening. You're bowing down to something else, like someone trying to reach awakening or something. That's an important point. The reason why the Buddha to be is so emaciated is because of wrong view. Right? So Ajahn Brahm always says, don't bow to that one because you're bowing to wrong view. That's what Ajahn Brahm says, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? It's kind of very different from how we often think about these things. We think this is what makes the Buddha special, the fact that he practiced so hard and he was so thin and all these kind of things. But actually, that is not the Buddha. That is the Buddha to be, still going wrong in the world. And so you can recognize, when we will see this in the sutta, we're going to look at, is it working all right? Yeah, is it all right? Okay. We're going to see this also in this sutta, how the Buddha essentially was very much similar to what we are like today. The Buddha to be, very much the similar kind of problems. And all of this matters, and the reason why it matters is because can be very hard to see the Buddha as an ordinary human being. We tend to think of the Buddha as almost like a god, or as like a kind of universal field of consciousness and all of these kind of things. It's very hard to see the Buddha as a human being. He goes beyond his humanness, just like we also have that potential to go beyond our ordinary humanness. But there is no fundamental difference between the Buddha to be and us. Essentially, we're trying to do the same thing. And that is where these suttas, these biographical suttas, autobiographical suttas, where they become very powerful. Because if the Buddha is like us, then when he practices, when he talks about his own way of doing things, it becomes an example to us how we should also practice. If the Buddha is fundamentally different from us, if the Buddha is some kind of God or some kind of universal field of consciousness, the Dhammakaya or the, whatever it is, then of course it's not really interesting what the Buddha did because it's different. We have to do our own thing. But if the Buddha is the same as us, then his practice is irrelevant to the way we should be practicing. And of course, when you think about it, the only reason why the Buddha would talk about his own life is to inspire us and to say, this is what I did, do the same. So we are following in the footsteps of the Buddha in this way. That's kind of extraordinary. It means that you have that potential of a Buddha inside of you. If the Buddha is practicing one way now, I should do the same as the Buddha. Wow, that's pretty cool, isn't it? It means that there is no fundamental difference in a way between one human being and another, even between the Buddha to be and the way that we are now. So that's kind of really uplifting. You have that little Buddha inside of you waiting to come out. That's kind of cool. So thinking about these things in the right way can be very inspiring and very uplifting. And sometimes in Mahayana Buddhism talk about Buddha nature, and that is one way of thinking about the idea of Buddha nature. I don't know if it always means that in Mahayana Buddhism, but it's one way of thinking about it. Developing yourself, allowing this potential to come forth and to emerge from us, so we can also achieve. Maybe we can go all the way. If we can't go all the way, we can go part of the way. Every little bit is very useful. So let us have a look at this sutta, Arya Pariyesana Sutta. These are Pali words. Arya means noble. Pariyesana means to search, to look for, to search, to seek out. And so this sutta means the noble search. The noble search. It's kind of nice, isn't it? So often in life we don't do noble search. So often in life we search for things that are not really noble. Most of the time we just search for ordinary things. We search for, have an ordinary happy life, have a nice boyfriend or girlfriend or nice husband or wife, having kind of this, making the world work. That is kind of ordinary search. In fact, the Buddha calls this the ignoble search. So the vast majority of people in the world, they're doing this ignoble search. It is not really noble. But a noble search is a search where what we are trying to do is to elevate ourselves, to make ourselves into noble human beings. And a noble human being here does not mean that you become an aristocrat. It doesn't mean that you kind of ascend to the higher echelons of Hong Kong society, whatever that might be, or Perth society, or whatever. Yeah, that has got nothing to do with it. That is kind of worldly nobility. What we are searching for is the nobility of the heart. Nobility of the heart is that sense of when you feel inside of yourself that you're becoming purified, you're becoming more kind, you're becoming more generous, you're becoming more peaceful, you have more compassion for the world, your wisdom is increasing. This is the nobility of the heart, the nobility within. And what happens when you do live in this way and you become a more noble person, you also become more happy at the same time. Nobility and happiness always go hand in hand. The more noble you are, the more you have of all of these good qualities, the better you will feel about yourself. It's a very beautiful word, this word nobility, being a noble person, noble of mind, noble of heart. There's something very powerful about that, I think everybody wants, in some way, I think, to be noble, because it is something very uplifting about that idea. So we are going to search for nobility within ourselves, and this is what this is about, the Buddha is saying here. So what is this noble search? So I'm going to read a little bit from the suttas, and I will explain to you as we go along, and I will kind of add a lot of commentary. Sometimes most of it is commentary, don't read so much. Other times we read a bit more, and there's less commentary. So this is from Bhante Sujato's translation. He's a good friend of mine. He's an Australian monk. He lives in Sydney at the moment, and many of you probably have heard of him. Some probably have not. So this is his translation. And this is just an extract of a very long sutta, and so we're kind of beginning in the middle of it. And the Buddha says, "Good mendicants, it is appropriate for gentlemen like you, who have gone forth in faith from lay life to homelessness, to sit together and talk about the teaching." The teaching is the Dhamma. When you're sitting together, you should do one of two things: discuss the Dhamma, the teaching, or keep noble silence. So the Buddha has come. What the backstory here, there's a story that goes before this. It's not all there, so you can't really see exactly what's going on. But the story is that the Buddha was having a bath, and after he had the bath, Venerable Ananda, who was his attendant, he says to him, the monks are kind of over there in this hermitage. Would you like to come and give them a talk? Or actually, that's not exactly what he says. He said, would you go there out of compassion? That's what he says. It's a beautiful way of asking someone to do something. Would you come out of compassion? Because what that means is that it means that when you ask somebody, you are kind of asking for their higher nature to come forth. Please come out of compassion. There is suffering in the world. All of these monks sitting in the hall waiting for you. They want to hear this noble message of the Dhamma. Please come out of compassion. And by doing that, you are asking in the right way. So in the future, if you want someone to come to Singapore, someone who might be hard to get to come, not to Singapore, to Hong Kong. Too much traveling, sorry. If you want someone to come to Hong Kong, forget about Singapore. If you want to come to Hong Kong, ask in this way, would you come out of compassion? Because it means that you understand the purpose of the person's visit. It is to enable us to live a better life, to learn the teachings of the Buddha in this way. That is what it is about. It's a really nice way of asking. And of course, whenever they ask the Buddha, will you come out of compassion, the Buddha says yes. Maybe sometimes it said no, but it's not recorded in the suttas. Yeah, whenever something is negative, it's not there. Only the positive is in the suttas. But probably sometimes he might say no. Yes, no, now is not the right time or whatever. But usually he says yes, because you are approaching things in the right way. Please come out of compassion. And so then the Buddha, he goes to this hall. This is like a hermitage. It's called Ramaka's hermitage. And he goes to this hermitage. And it's kind of interesting to see how the Buddha interacts with the monks and how he interacts with the world around him. Because you may think that the Buddha is kind of, as I said before, very elevated. And he is above society. The Buddha can do what he wants. Right? He doesn't have to kind of deal with ordinary conventions, and he's the boss, so he can tell other people what to do and these kind of things. But actually it isn't like that. One of the kind of remarkable things about the Buddha is that he acts according to the conventions of society. He is polite, he is courteous, he is friendly. He is not some kind of aloof person above everyone else that tells everyone else what to do and just gives Dhamma talks. No, the way he interacts with people is actually very fascinating. So he goes to this Ramaka's hermitage, and when he comes there, the door is closed. And when he's standing outside, he can hear the monks talking inside. What does he do when he hears the monk talking? Does he knock on the door? He doesn't even knock on the door, right? What he does, and this is kind of extraordinary, he waits outside until the monks have finished talking inside. Then he coughs. This is the right way. You know this, Freddie, because you've been to Thailand so often. Yeah, you know how this works. Yeah. So we cough, and that's how you make your presence known. It's the polite way of making it known that you are there. So you cough, yeah, or whatever. And then the monks inside, they hear you, and when they hear, they kind of, wow, someone is here, yeah. And then they go, and then they open the door, and then when they open the door, then the Buddha comes in. So it's kind of extraordinary. This is the Buddha, right? He's acting just like any other human beings would do in society. This is how he interacts with the world around him. He is a human being just like everyone else. When people see him, they treat him with respect, but not as anything very unusual. How would you feel if someone just started coughing outside right now? Would you say, oh yeah, it's probably just the Buddha, let's finish our talk and then we can... You probably wouldn't. You'd probably get really scared, if it was the Buddha standing outside. I would get scared if the Buddha was out there. You know what I mean? Because we have this idea of the Buddha as something fundamentally different from ourselves. But from them, it is just like someone is standing outside. And someone is there. You go for think, oh, someone is here. You go and open up. And when you go open, you put your hands in Anjali maybe because you want to be polite. And you say, oh, please come in, Venerable Sir. Yeah, then the Buddha comes in. Then he sits down over here. See, he's over here. Yeah, he's sitting over here. And so this is what it's like. It's almost like you are interacting with an ordinary human being. Yeah, it's a bit like, and I think sometimes in those days they interacted more naturally with the Buddha than we sometimes interact with ordinary monks. Yeah, sometimes people are so afraid of monks. It's kind of weird. Yeah, especially depending on the culture you're in. But in some cultures, it's like a monk is kind of really scary, and people are kind of really frightened of what might happen. In those days, it's almost as if the interaction with the Buddha was more ordinary. And so then the Buddha comes into the hall, and then he sits down on the seat. And what does he say? What he says, as he starts out, is not there. You won't find it there because I have elided it. You see, I haven't actually put it in there. I've left some of these things out. And so what he says, well, what were you talking about now before I got in? Yeah, he is taking his starting point with their discussion. He's taking an interest in what they are doing. He doesn't just start talking as if he is the king or the boss or whatever. What were you talking about? And then the monks reply, well, actually, we were just talking about you, Venerable Sir, talking about, the Buddha or the Bhagava, whatever I can't remember exactly the word they use in this context. And then the Buddha gives this reply, good mendicants. It is good that when you come together, you should talk about the Dhamma, or you should remain noble silent. So the monks say, we were talking about you, Venerable Sir. And the Buddha replies, it's good that you're talking about the Dhamma. So how does that work? Are you talking about the Buddha or the Dhamma? Of course, the point is that the Buddha and the Dhamma are almost indistinguishable. If you talk about the Buddha in the right way, you are talking about his qualities, and those qualities are a reflection of the Dhamma. The Buddha is like the Dhamma in human form, the Dhamma incarnate. Yeah, karna is a Latin word which means the flesh. So like in the flesh, the Dhamma in the flesh is what you see. Yeah, Dhamma in human form. Everything the Buddha does, everything he says, the way he acts, is in accordance with Dhamma. So when you talk about the Buddha, you're talking about the Dhamma. When you talk about the Dhamma, you are essentially referring to the Buddha as well. So these things go together. So there's not really different. And so he says, good mendicants. So does the word mendicant mean anything to you? Has anyone heard this word before you came here today? This is the first time in your life you hear the word mendicant? Yeah? Not very common word. Yeah? If you go on the street in Hong Kong, they don't usually say mendicant. Mendicant. Well, if you see a monk, you don't usually say mendicant. Is that right? Yeah. Mendicant. Venerable mendicant, please come here. Mendicant is a very old-fashioned word in English. And when I first heard it, I sort of had to look it up as well, because I didn't really know exactly what it meant. But mendicant is someone who lives on alms. Someone who lives on the donations of others. That's what it means in English language. It means exactly the same thing as bhikkhu. So when the Buddha says good bhikkhus, I can't, what does it say? Sadhu maybe? Sadhu, what is the Pali word? I'm not sure. Have you got the Pali there, everybody? Wow, you got more than I have. I have the Pali as well. I should always have the Pali handy. Otherwise I'm not doing you a proper service. You're going to be very knowledgeable in Pali by the time you leave this retreat. Is that a good idea? Sadhu bhikkhave. Okay, so that was exactly what I was saying then. So good sadhu bhikkhave. So mendicants, bhikkhu is mendicant. Yeah, someone who is living on alms. Bhikkhuni is a female mendicant. Yeah, living on alms. Okay, so here I've got the Pali text as well, so I can check it up later on. So the Buddha says, good bhikkhus, mendicants. It is appropriate for gentlemen like you. Gentlemen, it's interesting, isn't it? Gentlemen. Why does Bhante Siddhartha use the word gentleman? And the reason is because these are called the Kulaputta in Pali. And Kulaputta means like a son or an offspring of a good family. Yeah? Kula are like the clans or the families, the large families in ancient India. In those days, they lived in very large families, right? It's only very recently that we have started to live in very small family units. The whole world used to live in these large family units until very recently, only the last maybe 100 years or so, that things have really changed. And so ancient India was like that as well. Your grandparents were there, your aunties and uncles were there, all the servants were there, all the workers in the household. Maybe you had a small business, maybe you were farmers, and everyone would kind of living together. And so the people who were like in charge of the household, the main family members, these were like the establishment in that ancient Indian society. And they were called the Kulaputta. So these were like the establishment. So the point here, the reason why this terminology is used is because it wasn't just the kind of the downtrodden people or the outcasts. They weren't the only ones who became monks and nuns. Yeah, if you were like really had a really difficult time and you had a lot of abuse and problem, okay, maybe you become a monk and nun just to run away. Yeah, but no, that's not the point. The point is that those people who were on top of society, they become monastics. This is such an important point to remember, because the point is that the Buddhist path is not a path to avoid the problems of the world. Actually it is, but not kind of the ordinary problems of the world, oppressions or whatever. It is a path to overcome any kind of human suffering. This is kind of the point. So it is valuable for everyone. It doesn't matter if you are a king. It doesn't matter if you are the richest person in the world. You should practice this path, because that human suffering that is common to everyone has that. It doesn't matter who you are. So the idea here of Kulaputta is the idea that everyone should become a monastic. Because this is overcoming that fundamental human suffering that is there for every one of us, regardless of who you are. In fact, I think sometimes we should be very lucky that we're not the richest person in the world, or even the top 1%. Because if you are really, really wealthy, it becomes very difficult to go forward. You become trapped by the world. The world holds you. No, you have to stay. You have to look after the family fortune for the next generation, these kind of things. Actually, I know some people who went forth, even though they were extremely, extremely wealthy. So that's kind of very impressive. But it's actually quite rare, because the world tends to trap us. Or if you are the king, if you are King Charles of England, imagine how difficult it is to become a monk. Really hard. If you're King Charles, you are trapped. You have to kind of carry on as king, especially because you are the head of the church as well. You get born as a head of a church. You have no choice whatsoever. I can't imagine anything much worse than being born as a king or a queen. People think that's good news. Actually, it's really a massive kind of entrapment. There's no freedom at all if you are a king or a queen. So all of these things, we need to forget about all of this kind of stuff as if that is important. Actually, it's bad news. And we should be very happy that we are just ordinary people who can choose to go forth and choose to do what is right. And the Buddha says that is when you actually go forth, when you understand the nature of existence, the nature of life. And the Buddha's teachings are so profound, so deep, that it is valuable. Not only valuable, it is the very meaning of life for any kind of person in this world. That's the message here. Okay, so it is appropriate for gentlemen like you who have gone forth in faith from the lay life to homelessness. You haven't gone forth for any other reason. You haven't gone forth because you want to get nice food from Freddie every morning. He offers you a nice breakfast. You haven't gone forth because you know, whatever the reason might be, because you want to escape this or that. You have gone forth out of faith. Because you understand, or confidence if you like, because you understand that there is something here that is really worthwhile in a very, very profound sense of the word. That is why you go forth. There are some beautiful stories in the suttas about people going forth. And I haven't actually included those suttas here, but included some people who really understood what the Dhamma was about, really understood the suffering of ordinary life. A very famous story is the famous story of Rattapala. And it's also found in the Vinaya as well. According to the Rattapala, is found in the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, called the Majjhima Nikaya, number 82, Sutta number 82. You can check it out later on if you understand how these numbers work. If you don't understand how they work, Freddie is your go-to man. He can show you where everything is. I'm putting a lot of work onto Freddie now, so I hope you will forgive me, Freddie, for all these extra burdens. So according to the Rattapala Sutta, the Buddha came to the village where Rattapala was staying. And when the Buddha came there, he gave a Dhamma talk. All the people would come out from the village to listen to the Buddha. It's kind of really beautiful. One of the things, I have a lot of respect for Indian society. Indian society is a very spiritual and religious kind of society. If a great spiritual teacher comes to your village, everyone goes out to listen to this teacher. When I come to Hong Kong, 40 people come, that's it. Where's everyone else? I'm being naughty. I'm not comparing myself to the Buddha at all, but it's different, right? Even if the Buddha came to Hong Kong, probably only a few hundred people would come, right? The Buddha, who is that anyway? Okay, whatever. I've got more important things to do, so I forget about that. In those days, very, very spiritual society. Yeah, so people would come out, they would listen, and everyone would kind of let go of their work. Everyone was interested in these things. It's very fascinating how that is. In the modern world, it's actually it's very, very different. In Australia, people are not religious anymore. They don't really care about anything. And they kind of just shrug their shoulders and they wonder what kind of weirdo you are walking around in funny robes and a shaven head. What is this all about? It's weird. And there are people in Australia as well who have a lot of respect for monks, but the majority, of course, don't. So Indian society is different. And so they all go out to meet the Buddha, and they all do different kind of things. Some bow down to the Buddha, some put their hands in Anjali, some just say the name, and they shout the name and clan, I am so-and-so. And the Buddha says, whatever, or I don't know what the Buddha would say. And then they sit around, and the Buddha gives a Dhamma talk. And just like today, some after the Dhamma talk get really inspired, but the majority probably just shrug their shoulders. Maybe the reason why everyone went out in those days, because there was no entertainment in those days, so they just went for the entertainment, maybe. I don't know. I mean, people, there's probably some truth to that, because that society was very simple compared to modern society. But there were some people who got very profound faith. They heard the word of the Buddha. The Buddha talked about the suffering of life. He talked about the ending of suffering. He talked about the highest kind of happiness that is attainable. And he says, you don't know anything about happiness. The kind of happiness you have in your life is just nothing compared to what actually is achievable. Why are you content with this dung happiness when you can have real diamond happiness instead? I'm just making it up. There's no such thing as diamond happiness. But anyway, you get the idea. Why are you happy? Why not go for the real thing? And then some people get the message. They understand the dangers of samsara, the dangers of ordinary existence. And then if you have a very profound faith, a very deep understanding of what is going on, you want to go forth. You want to become a monastic. And this is what happened with Ratapala. So when he went forth, when he then, after the talk, he goes up to the Buddha and says, please, allow me to become a monk. And the Buddha says, well, have you got your parents' permission? You needed to have your parents' permission because in those days, the families were so close together that if you just left, it meant that the family business and the farming had to be done by someone else. It could lead to a lot of difficulties for the family. So you had to be allowed to go forth. And then the Buddha goes back to the Ratapala goes back to his parents. Even the Buddha got permission from his parents, by the way, before going forth. So he goes back to his parents and he says to his parents, well, please allow me to go forth. And the parents said, no way, no chance, I'm not going to let you go forth. You are our only son. Just like in the old sons were very important in India and those that you're our only son. We are a wealthy family. We don't want our wealth to be squandered and go to the king. You must look after our wealth and carry on the family business. And so what do you think Ratapala did? Did he say, oh I guess you have a point, okay, I'll be a householder? Absolutely not. If you have really strong faith in the Dhamma, if you understand what is at stake, what you do and what he did, he says, well, in that case, if you will not allow me to go forth, I will lie down on the ground, on the floor right here, and either I will lie here until I die, or you will let me go forth. And so that's cool, isn't it? That is being really determined, And you can imagine his parents were starting to feel a bit, whoa, what's going on here, What is happening? 1 day goes by, 2 days goes by, he's lying on the floor. His parents starting to get worried. 3 days go by, 4 days go by. After 7 days, his parents are getting really worried about this, right? They just lying on the floor all the time. And then they get his friends to come and say, oh, friends, please tell Ratapala to kind of, enjoy himself and these kind of things. And eventually the friends say to the parents, well, either you allow him to go forth, or he will die. So what are you going to choose? And if he goes forth, well, he might still come back and visit you, right? So you still see him, but if he dies, well, he can't visit you. Well, and if he visits you, it's going to be really scary because he will be a ghost if he's dead, right? So that would be really, so don't want to see him then. And so his parents then eventually relent. And then they say, okay, you can go forth. So this is kind of the degree when we talk about faith and inspiration, understanding what these teachings are about. If you really understand what they are about, they lead to this kind of commitment, when you really want to give your entire life for these things, because everything else pales in comparison. Everything else is temporary. Everything else only lasts for a short while, and then you die anyway. Why do you want to spend your life building up things in this life, which all has to disappear when you die? What's the point? Build up something which lasts. Build up something which has like a real future. Then you are going to be on the right track. You really understand the meaning of life itself, what this is all about. And then you go forth out of faith. So that is the idea of going forth out of faith. It's not some kind of random reason. There's a really good reason for going forth. And so you become a homeless one. This is the anagarika, we call them in the suttas, or in anagariang, which means a homeless person. And so you either sit down, you do one of two things. You discuss the Dhamma, or you keep noble silence. One of two. You don't say good morning to anyone. Don't say hello to anyone. You become this kind of mute person, and you talk sensible words all the time. And people really become to hate you because of that. This person never says anything which is nice. They're never friendly. All the talk is that the Four Noble Truths, or they are silent. So it doesn't mean that. It means that part of life is to be friendly, part of life is to be kind, part of life is to have a little bit of small talk. Small talk is okay. Oh, the weather is not, looking good. When I come to Hong Kong, people talk about the weather straight away. That's kind of the usual kind of starting point. So the point is not that we don't do any small talk and friendly talk, and we kind of greet each other and say, "How are you?" Of course, we do those things, but we don't do it too much. We do just the right amount, just enough to feel at ease. The Buddha does the same thing, which is kind of fascinating. The Buddha, when he sees you, he asks you how you are. He does that in the suttas. The Buddha also does small talk. It is not actually small talk. Small talk is important. Small talk is actually big talk. Small talk is important. It is part of feeling at ease, of relaxing, of being kind of having the ability to absorb the Dhamma when the Buddha teaches. And so what the Buddha is saying here is that generally speaking, we don't talk all the meaningless talk that most people in the world talk about. All the stuff about politics and about celebrities and about things in the world that go on endlessly, for which there is no solution, for there is no way forward, that just clogs up our minds and don't really have any real purpose. That is what we avoid. But we don't avoid the ordinary kindness. And so ordinary kindness together with Dhamma. And then apart from that, we keep silence. But you will notice, not just silence, but noble silence. What is the difference between silence and noble silence? Well, sometimes silence is a bit like you are forced to be silent. Noble silence is like a voluntary silence. When you choose to be, when your mind actually inclines towards being silent, when it comes naturally, that is the idea of noble silence, because your mind inside is also silent. You talk about the higher noble silence when you don't even think anymore. You go into the deep stage of meditation, the jhanas and these kind of things. This is the higher kind of noble silence. So it is voluntary. So noble silence should be something that you enjoy ideally, not something that you feel forced upon you. So when you come on a retreat like this, remember that by being silent, not only are you quietening down your mind, but you're also giving a gift to the people around you. On a retreat like this, everyone is going to enjoy it to some degree, probably. Some are going to enjoy it a lot. And you are allowing people the possibility of enjoying deep meditation by being silent. You're giving the people around you a gift. And everything in Buddhism, we should think about it like this. Yeah, everything we do should be like a gift. Everything we do should be an act of kindness towards the people around us. So why am I doing this silence? Well, because I want to be kind. Why am I talking? Why am I talking about it? Well, actually, because I also would like to share something with you that has been very powerful for me in my life. And so I also try to do these things as an act of generosity. So when we all treat each other with generosity in this way, then everything becomes lifted up. When you meditate, meditate as an act of generosity. Don't just meditate for yourself. Meditate for the whole world. Meditate because you want other people to benefit from your spiritual practice. It becomes much more powerful because it's much less self-centered. When I meditate here today, it's going to make me a better person, more peaceful, more kind, more generous, all of these kind of things. Afterwards, when I go back again to meet my family, whatever, I'm going to have more time for my family members, be more patient with them, have more kindness towards them. I'm doing this for them and for myself. And this is one of the ways of thinking about whether what you are doing is a real Buddhist act or not, a real spiritual act. Are you doing it for both yourself and for others? That is the right way of thinking. If you do it just for yourself, it becomes too self-centered, and then often you lose the spiritual path. If you just do it for others, then you are sacrificing yourself too much. It should be both at the same time, doing the spiritual practice for yourself and for others. And when it comes together in this way, that's when it becomes very powerful and strong. So noble silence too is about yourself and others. It's a gift that you are giving to the world. When you're closing your eyes, everything we do is like that. The kindness, the generosity, it is more obvious, of course. So this is a way of thinking about the idea of noble silence, how it actually is supposed to work. So this is the starting point of this particular sutta. We're supposed to go on for an hour and a half, Della. Should we have a short break halfway? Is that a good idea? So people have a chance to stretch the legs a little bit. Don't get too exhausted. Okay, so this is now is probably a good time to have a short break. So let's have a break for about 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes max, between 9.5 and 10 minutes. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.